Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The midday sun shone brightly in the sky, but in the large, glass-walled hall of Lincoln & Company, the atmosphere was heavy. Sarah Thompson, a respected black businesswoman in her city, sat in an uncomfortable chair, clutching her bag. For 3 long hours, branch manager Jonathan Blake had kept her waiting. Every time she asked for an appointment to finalize a loan crucial to her business, he had come up with an excuse: "I'm sorry, Ms. Thompson, I'm still busy with another client." But what made the situation unbearable was the condescending tone, the insistent stares, and the way other customers, mostly white, were received immediately and courteously. Sarah, patient and calm until then, felt a dull anger rising within her. As she began to rise to demand justice, the bank door burst open. A group of people entered, the bank's board of directors, there for a surprise inspection of the branch. Among them was Mrs. Eleanor Harris, an influential board member known for her firm stance against any injustice or discrimination. Mr. Blake's gaze froze when he recognized Sarah and the presence of the board. The tension ratcheted up a notch. Until then in control of the situation, he suddenly found himself under the scrutinizing gaze of those who made the bank's final decisions. Sarah, for her part, said nothing. She simply crossed her arms, her composure contrasting sharply with the visible panic on the director's face. That day, the 3 hours of humiliation and waiting would take a dramatic turn. The board of directors would discover what Blake had been trying to hide: his discriminatory behavior and his inability to treat all customers equally. And for Sarah, this long wait would become the prelude to an unexpected victory. Sarah Thompson remained standing, ramrod straight, while the bank manager, Jonathan Blake, visibly tried to hide his panic behind a forced smile. The board members moved slowly into the lobby, observing the scene with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Mr. Blake, we have been informed that certain practices here do not meet the bank's standards," Ms. Eleanor Harris stated firmly, crossing her arms. "Can you explain why this customer has been waiting for over 3 hours?" Blake stammered, red with anger and shame. It was just a misunderstanding, we were busy." Sarah cut him off with a simple wave of her hand. 3 hours, Mr. Blake. 3 hours during which I saw other customers served immediately. I am here to finalize a large loan, and you have treated me as if I did not exist. The counsel exchanged glances. Ms. Harris, in a calm but icy tone, placed her hand on the makeshift meeting table in the middle of the hall. "Mr. Blake, we have evidence that several black customers have been systematically delayed or ignored at this branch. Your behavior does not reflect the values of Lincoln & Company." Blake tried to protest, but it was clear his arguments fell flat. The other council members took notes and whispered amongst themselves. The tension mounted, and for the first time, Blake felt the weight of his actions. Power was no longer on his side. Sarah remained calm, but inside, a sense of justice was growing. 3 hours of humiliation, frustration, and anger were finally about to bear fruit. She knew this moment would mark a turning point. Mrs. Harris leaned slightly toward Sarah. "We will review your case immediately and ensure that this situation never happens again." Sarah's gaze became more resolute. Finally, she was no longer alone in the face of injustice. The council was now watching over her. And for Blake, it was the beginning of a nightmare he had never anticipated. The board of directors settled into the branch's main office, which had been transformed into an impromptu courtroom. Sarah sat calmly, while Blake remained standing, visibly uncomfortable. The board members began reviewing client files and the bank's surveillance videos. What they discovered was shocking. For several months, numerous black customers had been systematically delayed, some turned away without reason, while white customers were treated quickly and courteously. Every formal complaint had been either suppressed by Blake or downplayed by branch staff. Ms. Eleanor Harris looked up at Blake, her voice as cold as steel. "Mr. Blake, this is not a simple misunderstanding. Your actions constitute systematic discrimination. You have abused your position to humiliate and disadvantage certain customers." Blake tried to justify himself. I was just following procedures. Another council member, Mr. Richard Collins, shook his head. Following procedures does not mean ignoring or discriminating against customers. Your behavior is unacceptable and jeopardizes the entire reputation of this bank. Sarah felt a wave of inner satisfaction, but remained polite and professional. She knew that true victory lay not in anger, but in justice and demonstrating her integrity. Mrs. Harris turned to her. Ms. Thompson, we will not only expedite your case, but also take disciplinary action against the branch manager. You should never have been subjected to this treatment. Blake's face turned livid. The murmurs of the staff and customers in the room reinforced the weight of his actions. Every second, reality crashed down on him. The injustice he had inflicted had just backfired. Sarah stood up with dignity and declared, I simply wanted to be treated fairly and to obtain the necessary funding for my business. Thank you for listening to me. At that precise moment, Blake understood that his career might have just been irrevocably altered, and that the board would not tolerate any such infraction. Justice, after hours of waiting and humiliation, had finally prevailed. The following morning, news of the confrontation at the branch was already circulating throughout the financial district. Blake, once confident and respected by his team, was now under everyone's scrutiny. The board of directors had made a swift and decisive decision. A formal internal investigation would be launched, and Blake was suspended from his duties pending the results. In the boardroom, Sarah was invited to a special meeting regarding her loan application. The board members explained that, thanks to her perseverance and integrity, her application would receive priority processing. The necessary funds for her business would be released within a few days. Blake, for his part, was confronted by the regional director. Jonathan, your actions have endangered the bank. Not only have you discredited your branch, but you have also tarnished your personal reputation. The board will no longer tolerate this type of behavior. He tried to downplay the situation, but no one was willing to listen. The evidence was overwhelming: videos, witness statements, and customer files. Every staff member present had seen his mistakes, and for the first time, Blake felt the full extent of his arrogance. Meanwhile, Sarah left the bank with a feeling of quiet triumph. 3 hours of waiting, 3 hours of frustration, but in the end, everything had changed. Her loan was approved, her project could finally begin, and she had just delivered a powerful lesson in respect and perseverance. As she stepped out into the bright sunshine, she noticed the looks from the staff and customers, some embarrassed, others admiring. She hadn't just won funding, she had proven that dignity and patience could overcome even the most entrenched arrogance. Blake, sitting in his office now devoid of his usual authority, understood a lesson he would never forget: treating someone with contempt, because they are different, always amounts to trapping yourself. A week later, the Lincoln and Company branch was in turmoil. The board had reorganized management and implemented new procedures to ensure fairness for all customers. Jonathan Blake was a shadow of his former self, forced to attend a public meeting where his conduct would be reviewed by his peers and staff. Sarah Thompson, meanwhile, was launching the first phase of her business, financed by the approved loan. Local media, having learned of the incident at the bank, began reporting the story as an example of justice and perseverance. Sarah wasn't seeking fame, but her success was now symbolic. It showed that courage and dignity could triumph over injustice. At the public meeting, Blake was called upon to explain himself before the staff and the board. His voice trembled, and each word seemed to come out with difficulty. I acknowledge my mistakes. I deeply regret. Ms. Eleanor Harris, firm and imposing, looked him straight in the eyes. This isn't just about regret, Mr. Blake. It's about righting the wrongs, learning from the experience, and ensuring it never happens again. Your arrogance and prejudice nearly cost the bank its reputation and humiliated respectable clients. Blake lowered his head, unable to reply. The lesson was clear: his actions had irreversible consequences. For her part, Sarah watched the scene with calm and satisfaction. Her business was going to thrive, and she had just proven that patience, dignity, and perseverance could change the course of events. The board, impressed by her exemplary attitude, even offered her a mentoring role to raise employee awareness of fairness and respect for customers. As she left the room, the sun was gently setting over the city. That long 3-hour wait in a cold office had turned into a resounding victory. For Sarah, it was more than a loan, it was confirmation that injustice, when confronted with courage, is always ultimately righted. And for Blake, it was the end of an era of arrogance and the beginning of a painful but necessary introspection.